boys, go, we're bound for the unknown. Out on the water, no one can stop her, captain of the Jolly
Welcome
Otter.
to the adventures of the Jolly Otter. Chapter 7. That's what pirates do. Camilla had lost everything. Her friends, her ship, her black captain's hat. But as she rode astride a dolphin as it leapt through the churning waves, wind at her back, sea spray in her fur, she couldn't help but think to herself, "This is who I am meant to be." And she would never let anybody take that away from her, especially not someone so loathsome as the lizard that was holding her friends prisoner. But while riding a dolphin across the ocean, towards the climactic showdown between good and evil was thrilling enough for the otter, the stoat was equally, if not more so, absolutely miserable. It was everything he could do not to lose his hat or his lunch, and he could swear his dolphin was purposely aiming towards the big waves. But he knew he sort of deserved a little recompense for putting them all in this predicament in the first place, so he held on tight and did his best to swallow his pride instead of the entire ocean as they leapt through the water. The dolphins saw the Jolly Otter earlier that morning, so they knew which way it was headed and followed suit. While they caught up, Camilla asked Weasel what he could tell her about the Crooked Crocodile's crew. Between coughing up salt water and regretting every decision he'd ever made in his life that had led him to this point, Weasel managed to describe them. Snake was the crocodile's personal chef, and just as repugnant a reptile. He delighted in cooking up anything, or anyone, he could catch in his scaly clutches. Then there was Hyena, the bosun. The bosun was typically tasked with maintaining the ship, which was why the Jolly Otter had been in such terrible condition when Camilla acquired it. Hyena was as cruel as they came, and was much more interested in the parts of pirating he considered fun, namely, the plundering and pillaging. Finally, a creature so violent, so dangerous, so fiendish, that Weasel could not even speak his name. This was the Master-at-Arms, the pirate who, as Weasel told it, fought all of the crocodile's battles with unbridled fury and unmatched ferocity, known across the 7 seas simply as the Beast. Camilla knew that if these pirates were still loyal to the Crooked Crocodile after all the nasty, no-good things he'd done, they'd probably never change their wicked ways. Kindness alone would not get her crew back. Camilla would have to be quick and clever to defeat these terrifying foes, but most importantly, she would need the help of her friends. The sun had set, and the moon was rising high in the sky, reflecting off the water and illuminating the night, when they first spied the dark silhouette of the Jolly Otter. Its sails were furled, folded and secured, so that they wouldn't catch the wind. Perhaps the Crooked Crocodile sailed out of Santo Flamingo without a destination in mind, and was now plotting his next move. Against the darkening sky, Camilla could also see a big round shape up on deck. It was a giant net hanging from the mast, and inside the net was the crew of red squirrels. Evidently, the crocodile did not appreciate how quickly they had forgotten their former captain, and bundled them all up in a ball until he decided the most fitting punishment for their perceived betrayal. As much as she wanted to help them, Camilla couldn't just jump up on deck and cut them down. They were unarmed and outnumbered. But the squirrels, being relatively unharmed, gave Camilla hope that there was still time to save the rest of her crew. But until she found 2 rats, Smoky, Monty, and Emilio, they had to maintain the element of surprise. The dolphins quietly swam up to the hull of the ship and allowed Camilla and her bedraggled stoat companion to grab hold of it. They pulled back a little so as not to garner any unwanted attention, but stayed nearby just in case. Camilla and Weasel climbed up the side of the ship and slipped inside an open porthole window on the lower deck. While Weasel emptied the seawater out of his pants, Camilla crept towards the galley, where a light was coming from the crack in the open doorway. Inside, she heard the sound of metal against metal, but also something else, something much scarier. Snake, the chef. He was a rattlesnake, to be precise, coiled up next to a giant pot of boiling water, sharpening a giant kitchen knife he held in a loop of his long, scaly body. Besides, the more important detail was that sitting on top of Snake's head sat the little chef's hat, shared by her own cook's 2 rats. It seemed Snake had decided they'd make an excellent hors d'oeuvre for the crooked crocodile. "Oh, good," Weasel whispered sarcastically. "He's got a knife. That'll make this so much easier. Maybe if you ask him nicely, he won't feed us all to the crocodile." Camilla ignored the sass and asked the stoat for the little stub of a pencil he kept behind his ear. Weasel, who'd taken great pains to keep it safe during the whole dolphin escapade, begrudgingly gave it to her. So you can imagine how he felt when she just hucked it across the room towards the far corner, away from 2 rats. It clattered across the wooden floor, causing Snake to swivel his head toward the sound. When he slithered across the room to investigate, Camilla tiptoed towards 2 rats and undid the latch to their cage. They squeaked excitedly, so glad to see their captain and to be spared such a gruesome fate. But they weren't out of trouble yet, because as Camilla pulled open the cage door, the hinges squeaked much louder than 2 rats, which caught Snake's attention. He turned round, saw the attempted prison break, and hissed at the intruders, shaking his rattled tail. Camilla had never been in a real fight before, and without a weapon, this one might have been her first and last. But before Snake could close the distance, 2 rats jumped between him and Camilla, shrieking twin tiny battle cries and running right at their captor. Camilla could barely stand to watch as Snake threw his knife at 2 rats. It lodged into the floor with a heavy thunk, barely missing Camilla's cooks. Snake was a snake, after all, and he didn't need a knife to hunt rats. He opened his mouth and exposed his long, venom-soaked fangs and lunged at the rats, who deftly dodged out of the way, nimbly jumping around the reptile. Snake turned his head and struck again to the left, but 1 rat had jumped right. Snake doubled back to strike right, but by that time the first rat was gone and the second rat was on his left. 2 rats hopped and juked and jumped, narrowly avoiding each of Snake's strikes. When finally the rats stood still, Snake tried to lunge, but couldn't. He'd been so caught up in trying to catch them, he hadn't realized that he'd tied himself up in a big knot. He hissed and squirmed, struggling to untie himself, but he had tied himself up tight. Camilla knelt to hug 2 rats, so relieved they were all right. And 2 rats was certainly happy to see their captain, but they had a lot of work left to do. They all picked up Snake, who could barely move except to feebly rattle his tail, and put him in the cage he'd kept 2 rats. That would hold him for a while, at least. Even still, Weasel's eyes darted around nervously. "Let's get going," he whispered. "We don't want the beast getting the jump on us." Closing the door behind them and locking the surly snake inside, Camilla, Weasel, and Two Rats set out to find the rest of the crew. Suddenly, they heard a familiar voice and tiptoed across the lower deck towards the source. The deck was dark, lit only by the moonlight shining through the portholes, so it wasn't hard to miss Smokey's cannon before they almost ran into it. But it was hard to miss Smokey as she dangled upside down by her feet, suspended way up off the floor by a length of rope. And just out of her paw's reach, even harder to miss, was the hulking, horrible, hideous hyena. "Just wait till I get my paws on you," Smokey shouted, swinging her tiny fists at Hyena. She had been at it for a while, but her struggles were ceaselessly amusing to the brutish bo'sun, who continued to laugh and laugh at her. Hyena's back was to Camilla and the others, and neither he nor Smokey had seen them approach. Peering out from behind the painted cannon, Camilla admired Smokey's determination. But what could she really do? What could any of them really do against Hyena? He was bigger than all of them combined. But then Camilla noticed something shimmering on the floor beneath Smokey, illuminated by a pale moonbeam from a nearby window. Gunpowder. Smokey was always covered in the stuff, but she had struggled so long and so hard to get free, she had shaken all the gunpowder out of her fur and onto the floor, and all over Hyena's feet. Camilla asked Weasel if he had any matches. Weasel reminded her in a very hushed but very cranky voice that he was still soaking wet, so even if he had a match, it wouldn't do them any good. Camilla felt a tug on her tail and looked down to see Two Rats, who reminded her they were hiding behind Smokey's cannon, and pointed to a little tin matchbox on the floor. She opened the box and pulled out the last match inside, struck it, and tossed it over the cannon into the gunpowder. There was a sudden hiss, a flash of light, and a burst of flame as the match ignited the gunpowder. Smokey was too high off the floor to be in danger, but Hyena was standing right on top of it. The fur on his feet caught fire instantly, and his cruel laughter changed to panic yelping just as quick. He hopped from one foot to the other, looking around for something, anything, to help him extinguish the flames. In his rush, he thought of the quickest way to get some water, and without any other thoughts as to what might happen next, ran headlong towards the nearest gun port and leapt through it, diving into the ocean below. While Two Rats threw a life preserver out the window after Hyena, Camilla freed Smokey. She was a little woozy from being upside down so long, but was otherwise unharmed. "Captain," Smokey cried, hugging Camilla tight, "I knew you'd come back. Moon Rabbit is definitely watching over you." Camilla hugged her back. She decided not to tell her gunner that it was Moon Rabbit's light that guided her to set her captor on fire. She didn't want to encourage that sort of behavior. And Weasel didn't want to waste any more time. "Look, we've been lucky so far," he said in a hushed tone, "but sooner or later we're going to run into the beast, and then we're in real—" Before Weasel could say trouble, trouble showed up all on its own. Two Rats squeaked. The party turned and saw the staircase leading up to the main deck, and across the steps a large black shadow. Weasel gasped, It's him! The beast!" The Crooked Crocodile's enforcer must have heard the gunpowder go off and came to investigate. Slowly, the shadow descended the stairs, stretching across the floor, engulfing Camilla and her friends, blocking out the moonlight coming from above. They'd been found out. They had nowhere to run. Weasel ducked behind Camilla, quaking in his pants. The owner of that monstrous shadow touched down at the bottom of the stairs. He sported a patch over one of his bloodshot eyes. He snarled and foamed at the mouth as he bared his dagger-like teeth. They were face to face with the crooked crocodile's most dangerous, ferocious, and merciless minion, the creature known only as a chihuahua? It was a chihuahua. The beast was a tiny little chihuahua. Camilla, Smoky, and Two Rats all slowly turned to Weasel. "This is the beast?" Camilla asked, trying not to sound too judgmental. It didn't work. Weasel pointed at the shaking, twitching, nervous creature that haunted his very dreams, which, again, was a chihuahua. "You have no idea the horrors that thing is capable of," he insisted. And he was right. Camilla couldn't even imagine. But the beast was ready to give her a demonstration. He growled a tiny growl and bared his tiny teeth and lunged at the otter. But before its paws had left the floor, it was picked up by the scruff of his neck. "Gotcha, you little devil!" It was Monty the raccoon. He held the beast aloft in one hand as it flailed and snarled, unable to attack its captor. With his free hand, he pulled an old map from his vest and rolled the chihuahua up into the parchment, nice and tight. "Little monster was tearing my maps to pieces," he explained, as he secured the beast's restraint with a strip of leather. "We heard some sort of explosion, and he left me behind, all tied up." Camilla was very glad to see her cartographer. "How did you get free?" she asked. She heard a tiny squeak, and the tiny octopus popped up on Monty's shoulder. "This little guy took the opportunity to crawl out from wherever he was hiding and squirted ink on my ropes," he said. "It made them slick enough that I could slip free." Monty then saw Weasel for the first time and scowled. "What are you doing here?" he snarled. But Camilla stepped between them. "I wouldn't be here without his help," she said. "We can talk about it later. Right now, we need to find Emilio and take care of the crooked crocodile." They left the beast down below, imprisoned in Monty's tightly rolled-up map, and headed topside to face down that no-good reptile. Up on the deck of the Jolly Otter, they found the Red Squirrel rigging crew still trapped in that giant net that swung from the main mast. They saw Camilla and her friends below and called down to them to set them free. But before anyone could climb up the mast to release them, the door to the captain's quarters burst open, flying right off its hinges. A tall, dark figure filled the doorway and growled as he stooped to step outside. He was green and scaly, with a black captain's coat and a black captain's hat. In his menacing claws he clutched a curved cutlass with a blade bigger than any one of Camilla's crew. The meanest, most selfish, and greediest pirate there was, the crooked crocodile, captain of the Snaggletooth. The deck creaked under the weight of each of the crocodile's heavy footsteps. His sword flashed in the moonlight. His eyes narrowed on Camilla the otter. She had tricked him, humiliated him. But there would be no more games, no more tricks. The crooked crocodile would show her just what being a pirate was all about. Camilla saw the violent intent in the crocodile's eye. In that moment she almost felt sorry for him. He was more concerned with hurting her than even thinking about his own crew. He was alone. Maybe, just maybe if she reached out to him. Then she felt a soft touch on her shoulder. "You know," Weasel said, stepping in front of the otter, "it's not always a good time for kindness. Sometimes some people need to hear the truth." Weasel started walking towards the crooked crocodile, who was slowly advancing, growling, drooling, all at the same time, towards the otter and her companions. "What does he think he's doing?" Monty asked. Camilla remembered what Weasel had told her on the dock, how Weasel was the crocodile's communications officer, how Weasel saved people a lot of suffering just by convincing them not to fight. Did the tiny stoat think he could reason with the reptile? "Boy, you must be as dumb as you are ugly," Weasel declared. Probably not the best start for a diplomatic solution, Camilla thought. The crooked crocodile turned his attention to Weasel, who had never before dared to challenge him. He altered course and began stomping at the stoat. Weasel seemed unfazed. "You must be joking if you think you can defeat Camilla, captain of the Jolly Otter, all by yourself," Weasel laughed. "You think because you're a big, scary pirate you can just walk all over anybody you like. But you know what? Pirates don't just hurt people, they play games." The crocodile took another step towards Weasel. "They sing shanties." And another. "They make maps and paint on cannons and cook shrimps." One more step. "But above all else," Weasel said, "they stick up for their friends, and they fight for what they believe in, and they do what's right." The crooked crocodile loomed over the little stoat. He opened his mouth, revealing his powerful jaws lined with jagged yellow teeth. "And you know what else about pirates?" Weasel said, arms folded across his chest, looking the croc right in the eye. "Pirates are good with knots." That's when Camilla realized Weasel had maneuvered the crocodile so he was standing beneath the giant net, still holding the ball of red squirrels. The crocodile, so intent on the smart-mouthed little stoat, had not come to the same realization until the entire rigging crew came crashing down on top of him. They landed with a chorus of groans and grunts, but the crocodile got the worst end of it, squished under the squirrels. Camilla and her crew looked up at the mast and saw a furry little figure in a familiar yellow waistcoat. Emilio! He'd been hiding in the crow's nest since the crocodile commandeered the ship, and thankfully took advantage of Weasel's distraction to get the drop on him. "Took you long enough, Furface," Weasel shouted at the chinchilla with a grin. Emilio scrabbled down the mast. "Nice to see you too, Weasel," he replied with the bravado of someone who had just single-handedly knocked out the most notorious pirate in the world. They all helped free the squirrels from the net and quickly used it to ensnare the crocodile before he came to. Emilio rubbed his hands together. "Well now, Captain," he said to Camilla, "what shall we do with him?" Monty was quick to suggest finding a deserted island in one of his maps and leaving the crocodile and his crew marooned. Smoky was even quicker to suggest firing the lot of them out of her cannon. Two Rats made a suggestion Camilla didn't quite understand, but she thought it involved that big pot of boiling water back in the kitchen. Camilla didn't know what to do. The crooked crocodile deserved all those fates and more, for all the misery and suffering he caused not just Camilla, but all the people he'd hurt over the years. But that wasn't the kind of pirate Camilla wanted to be. That's not the kind of person Camilla was. "Mr. Fiddlesticks," she said finally, turning to her cartographer, "set a course for Santo Flamingo." And so Camilla's crew gathered up the crocodile and his crew in the net. Snake was still all tied up, the hot-footed hyena was pulled out of the ocean, and at Weasel's insistence, the beast was left wrapped up in Monty's map. The Jolly Otter's sails unfurled, and they were on their way back to Santa Flamingo, the dawning sun at their backs, and the dolphins playing in the ship's wake. Arriving at port, they were greeted once again by Chief Constable Pierre Derriere, who was not just surprised to see Camilla again, but astounded that she subdued the crooked crocodile and his lieutenants. Pierre had his men take the pirates away to jail. The ox assured Camilla that they would not be harmed, but they wouldn't be harming anybody else either. Camilla thanked Pierre and sighed. So, she'd done it. Saved her friends, recovered her ship, defeated the bad guys, and done the right thing. Now, she was right back where she started, with no money and no supplies. And without those things, she couldn't even start to think about finding her purpose. As she turned to trudge back on board the Jolly Otter, Pierre called after her. "So then, I suppose you'll be taking that reward now?" Camilla stopped and turned. Reward? Pierre produced a massive bag, bigger than Camilla. It was filled to bursting with gold coins. He placed it down in front of her. As it turned out, there was a bounty on the crooked crocodile, a reward to be paid to anyone who brought the wicked pirate to justice. A bounty, as it turned out, big enough that Camilla could keep the Jolly Otter and its crew paid and fully supplied for a long, long time. Camilla was speechless, but Pierre got the idea. "You're welcome," he snorted and turned to walk away. "A do-gooder pirate. Who would have thought?" Emilio swooped in, eager to resume his duties as quartermaster for his captain. It was his purpose, after all. Camilla moved back, standing on the bow of the ship, as the crew descended on the bag of gold like a shiver of sharks. Camilla watched the chinchilla take command of a mob of money-hungry squirrels that once had him cowering in the crow's nest, and thought about her own purpose. She thought about her friends and all the things she'd done since leaving behind that tavern in a sleepy little town by the sea. Weasel joined her, his hands behind his back. "Looks like you can pay your crew with kindness," he mused, "so long as you exchange your kindness for gold." Camilla rolled her eyes. "Sticking around, are you?" she said. The stoat shrugged. "Well, it would be a waste of my talents if I weren't using them for a good cause. Which is what, by the way?" "Kindness," Camilla said. "I want to bring as much kindness as I can into the world. If that means helping people, or protecting the weak, or facing down unknown dangers, whatever it takes. Think you can help with that?" Weasel smiled. "Whatever it takes. You can't do anything without this." Weasel pulled from behind his back a black captain's hat. This one was much smaller than the crooked crocodile's. Small enough, it seemed, for an otter. Camilla was stunned. How did you... But Weasel only grinned and gave her the only answer she'd get. "I know a guy." Camilla placed the hat on top of her head. It was a perfect fit. The sea was calm. The sun was shining. The wind was with them. The Jolly Otter steered out into the open water, ready for adventure.
I shipped aboard the Jolly Otter with the freshest crew on salty water. All
along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy.
First mate's man was Emilio, the cutest chili ever did know. But give him a threat and he's sure to molt. So day and night he's aloft in the crow.
Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy.
Oh, Smokey was our cannoneer with soot-baked fur and twitchy ears. Could fire a turtle or 4-pound shot and hit a main mast going 22 knots.
Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy.
Monty the navvy finds what's lost, like broken tools and old worn-out socks. His treasure maps always make a splash, 'cause he's pulled them out of the tavern's trash.
Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy.
The cook called to rise to stock the galley with potent spices to make 'em rally. When supper steam rose up through the bores, we'd race to finish our daily chores.
Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy.
A band of squirrels were a shorehand rigging, could hoist and haul and never quit singing, but they hail from every foreign land, so not one song could we understand.
Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. The Jolly Otter was stuck at port. Able crew, but the money's short. Blew up tied up in a flounder steam till the tide's inverted and then the dream. Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Whoa! Get along, boys, get along too. Handy boys, so handy. Boys go, we're bound for the unknown. Out on the water, no one can stop her. Captain of the Jolly Otter.
Thank you for listening to The Adventures of the Jolly Otter, written and directed by Ben McLaughlin, narrated by Susan Lee McLaughlin, created and artwork by Amanda Bunce, with special thanks to Kate Bunce, Jill Kiter, and Corey Bunce. A Keo production.